People who quit their jobs on the first day. What was your "I'm outta here" moment? When the microwave in the lunchroom was coin activated. Worked in a hotel for a day. No one told me where anything was. Got chewed out for it. Guests enjoying their meals told me to pay no mind. I was doing a good job and that my boss is a cunt. I told the manager that I was quitting and wouldn't be doing the next shift. I arrived the next day, returning a work uniform, and my supervisor approached me and yelled at me for being late. I told her I already quit, but if I was working, technically I was 5 hours early for my shift. Absolute nutcases. The not getting told how to something then getting told off for doing it wrong thing happened to me. I was so mad. Got told to put something on shelves by checkout. Asked if there's any specific way it needs to be done. Get told, "No, idiot, it's not hard, you just put as much as you can fit on the shelf." Stack stuff on shelf. Why didn't you follow protocol around displaying stuff here? You have to count exactly how many you use for stock control and display them a certain way. Thought that one was a one-off, but the next day I ask what I should be doing after a busy period? There's nothing to do for a bit. Make us all coffee to practice using the machine. Halfway through making coffee, "Why haven't you done really important job? You don't have time to be taking coffee breaks." This was my trainer versus the manager. Turns out the trainer didn't want someone else working with her, so she sabotaged me and set me up for the manager to catch me doing the wrong things she told me to do. I told them they clearly have some issues to work out among themselves and quit. I got a job at a Build-A-Bear knockoff at the end of a mall that wasn't very busy. My interview with the owners was interesting. They were an older couple who said that they had wanted to open a Chick-fil-A, but you need about $1 million to do that. My first day, one other girl was working, and she didn't really talk to me. I had basically no training and she disappeared into the back. I was standing at the register area, which was underneath a giant storybook mushroom. A mother and her young son walk in and start to look at the bear skin options. I greeted them and left them to look around. They ended up leaving after a couple minutes and my coworker reappeared from the back with the cordless phone and handed it to me. It was my boss. He told me that when a customer walks in, he wants me to come out from under the mushroom to them. Come out from the mushroom. After he finished speaking to me, I hung up and went to my coworker and asked about the phone call. She said the place has cameras set up and the owners watch them from their house and call in a lot. I did not come back to work after that day. Not much room for improvement there. Fast food chain. I was 17. I found out during training that the place had been robbed 3 times in the past month and one employee was seriously injured. Not worth the $5 per hour. Edit. For those asking about the pay and the time, this was the U.S. state of Georgia in 2004. I worked at a KFC when I was 16. I remember the training orientation video told us over and over not to be a hero if you get robbed. Do they really think we're gonna take a bullet for them? Like we're gonna scream, "Not on my watch," and dive over the counter? Took a summer job at a textile plant and the trainer said, "Forget about taking a break if you want to stay caught up." Reply, "Forget about being caught up." Applied for a job at my longtime favorite restaurant, celebrated my birthday there every year. Owner asks me to come in for basically a tryout. As I communicated, I was looking at other job possibilities. I come in and they just stick me on dishwashing for an hour, no biggie. Then their dishwasher doesn't show up, so the kitchen manager asks me to stay one for their lunch rush. Saya, I'll get paid for the hours. I do. Kitchen staff was nice, so I was happy to help out even though I figured I'd be taking a different job. I fill out a time card at the end of the shift and tell the manager I probably wouldn't be back. He understands and thanks me for the help. Fast forward a couple weeks and he tells me to email the owner after I ask him if I should pick up my measly paycheck. I do. She basically tells me to fuck off over text. Tells me it was staging, and that she told me I wouldn't be paid. I respond that I understand that, but that I stayed an extra 3 hours which I was told I'd be paid for. She stops responding. I decide I want to be petty over the $40, so I get the STATW labor department involved. Dude goes in there and makes her pay me for the hours including the first, staging, hour. Couple weeks later I got my $40, never went back to that restaurant. Edit. Firstly, petty is not how I see it 2 years later. I am very glad I did this, and sharing the story with others in my city I learned this practice was very common with local restaurants. Hopefully others learn to stand up for their labor too from my small experience. Secondly, this restaurant closed down a couple weeks after I got that paycheck. The owner made a long-winded complaint on the FB page about how the food culture had changed in the city and her restaurant didn't fit in anymore. Total bullshit, they were always popular. Most people theorized the terrible mismanagement and employee abuse had caught up to her. You're not petty. I wonder how many other people they fleeced for free labor. Went into an Italian restaurant for my first day of work and I got 3 red flags on the very first day. One, the manager said he had lots of hours for me and getting shifts would be no problem. Every single other employee told me that they were struggling for hours and that they had no idea why they hired me. 2, everyone said the manager was an asshole. Even the customers. 3, it was my first day there, and I actually had to teach the woman training me how to do 1 or 2 things. Probably hired you to replace that woman. My very first job was at a little drive-in restaurant close to my high school. I showed up to work the first day. The lady said I had to pay her $50 for training. She showed me around the place and said that my pay would be $4.50 per hour as a car hop. This was in 2010. And all the tips I made went into a bucket with all the other girls' tips. At the end of the night, she counted up tips, kept 20% for herself and split the rest up evenly among every employee. Also, part of our job was 1 day a week we had to spend 4 hours cleaning her house. It seemed super shady. I literally left after listening to her go over all these rules. My dad was pissed until I explained, and another girl confirmed and my dad agreed I did the right thing. Shady and highly illegal. Tip pooling is legal but is supposed to be only with other tipped employees. Her skimming 20% off the top is not legal. Pretty sure you can't charge someone to train them for a job you hired them for. I was hired at a chain restaurant to be a hostess. I was so excited because my last job was washing dishes and because of my eczema, I had to quit. It was too painful to do that job. So, I arrived at my new job dressed up to be a hostess and those MFERS took me back to the kitchen to do dishes because the dishwasher just quit. I noped out of there real fast. Fellow eczemer, glad you got the fuck out of those jobs. Can't imagine anything worse. Salesman, for Kirby Vacuums. First sale call was to a single elderly woman who was supporting her son in hospital. They got us in the door by offering a free carpet clean as a demonstration. The supervisor training me pushed and pushed to make the sale until this old woman was in tears. Just as she was about to sign the paperwork I asked if she actually wanted to vacuum and she said it was lovely but she couldn't afford it. I took the paperwork away from her and said not to worry. Outside I told the supervisor I quit, to which he replied I would have been fired anyway. No love lost. I hung around for half an hour playing on my phone to make sure the supervisor left because he was a real piece of work. I got suckered into doing that when I was 17, naive, and desperate for a job. Biggest bunch of scumbags I ever met. The guy driving the van had some kind of relationship with the girl sitting shotgun and they were arguing, loudly, and she just straight up jumped out of the van while it was moving. His, and everyone else's reaction, was, we should get out of here. They wanted to just ditch this poor girl in a fucking random suburb an hour and a half from the city we drove out of. The only reason they picked her up is I swore to God and heaven above I would give everyone's names and addresses to the police. A few of them had paper out so they didn't like that. I had been working there for like 2 weeks at this point, but didn't go back after getting home that evening. Reprehensible garbage. Actually a pretty decent product though. I interviewed for a professional marketing assistant, and got the job straight away. I was under the impression that I would be an assistant to the man I was interviewed by. When I showed up for my first day, the same waiting room I was in the previous day was full of people. I quickly learned that we were all hired, and that I would be a door-to-door salesperson selling some pretty useless shit. I spent my entire day inside a Starbucks applying for other jobs and went home, got paid, but never went back. A similar thing happened to me. I feel your pain. I applied for an event planner job, having previously worked as a wedding planner, and got an interview with a company based in the city. Went to the interview the next day and something was off, but I couldn't figure it out. They asked me to work a trial day the day after, so I said yes. Get to the morning briefing and my trainer said we'd be working away from the office, so I'm thinking what sort of event is it? What would I be doing? How exciting. I'd be standing on a street corner in the rain trying to get OAPs so sign up to give to charities. What a scam. Edit to add. OAP stands for Old Age Pensioner. I thought it was universal acronym for native English speakers, but I may have been wrong. Not me, but I was training a new lifeguard. After our shift was mandatory staff training for our entire crew, where we practice rescues. Once she found out we actually had to practice and go in the water, she just walked out. Not really sure what kind of job she thought she had signed up for. I knew someone like that. She tolerated the water and activity enough to get certified because she just wanted to work as a lifeguard. In her head, that just meant getting to wear the red sweater and playing on her phone in the sun all day while flirting with guys. She didn't last long. I technically quit before my first day. I got hired at a well-known gift store. I was hired with the understanding that I would work Saturdays, Sundays, and a grand total of 8 hours a week, so 2 4-hour shifts. Also at minimum wage. Not a problem with me, done that before. I would just pick up a part-time job for rest of the week. Nope, apparently that wasn't allowed. The manager thought that was a horrible thing and disrespectful to her. I should only work for them and only them, and I should have better control over my money if I can't survive on $64 a week before taxes. Yeah, didn't show up cause fuck that noise. She called pissed off that I wouldn't show up to such a opportunity. I interviewed at UPS as a truck stocker back in the day. I was already working a part-time job and renovating homes. This was just gonna be a part-time gig since the hours worked out, 4 to 7 a.m. a few days a week. When I showed up, they told me that it was unacceptable to have any other work priorities because this was going to be my #1 priority. Got up and immediately left as she was still going through her introductory speech. I was a cashier at this cafeteria for a large company in my town. The people that worked at the company would put their tips in a bucket, and the people made a lot of money, so there was like 10s and 20s. The manager of the cafe wouldn't let me have any of tips because she said that cashiers couldn't be trusted, so she would ship the tip money to a church in El Paso. I immediately knew that this was a load of bullshit, and I just never went back. It's also illegal, I think, to collect money for one thing but do something else with it without disclosing what it is for. It is in fact illegal. Ended up being a scam to try and get free labor. I went for a job interview as a security guard. A man and a woman asked me my name, asked me how strong I was, then hired me and asked me to start immediately. That started alarm bells ringing. 2 questions in an interview and I am employed and working with no discussion about anything else. They took me down to their warehouse. Office interview was above it, and told me to start moving boxes from a shelf into a truck. I said hang on, the job is security not manual labor, and then they started getting really shitty with me and saying if you want the job then you need to do this as part of it. I was like yeah nah, I am out, and walked out. Total scam. There was no job and it really pissed me off because I could have gone to another interview at that time but choose to go there instead. I remember doing my licensing training and the trainer said to us, no security position should ever require you to 1. Do manual labor, 2. Clean unnecessarily, or 3. Make an arrest by yourself. AKA, you're not free manual labor, you're not a custodian, and you're not paid enough to make arrests, for the most part. Obviously, exceptions apply. Edit. I should mention that I live in Canada. I'm enjoying reading through all the comments and I see a lot of people commenting that security should never make an arrest. Where I live, security can make citizens arrests. It is difficult and it have a lot of steps, but it is legal and there are protections in place for the most part. Deputized guards are a new concept to me. I've never heard of those before, but it really is interesting learning the differences between Canadian and American security positions. Till. Started a new job unloading shipping containers and was told they had to be empty by midday. This was imperative because a new one was going to arrive in the early afternoon. It was a 2-man job if we both worked our asses off to get it done, boss says. Also your offsider is off work today. You will need to get this cleared. I just walked out. Even if it was a trial by fire, I wasn't interested in working for these cunts. Fuck that. Is trial by fire actually a thing? Like employers actually do that? I had a job for 1 day selling home security equipment door to door. The whole idea was basically to make it seem like you're doing them a service and then lock the customer into 5-year contracts. My supervisor and I were in this one home of a family that hardly some English. The father said they had been struggling with finances, but my supervisor kept pushing it on them, and the customer seemed like he didn't fully understand what was going on. I couldn't in good conscience take these people that were already struggling and put them in a worse position. It's the same for retailers that force credit cards with ridiculous APRs. I cannot, in good conscience, tell someone who is financially hurting to sign up for a card that would do more harm than good. The worst thing is, they cut your hours if you don't get enough people to sign up for the cards. I was hired to be a waitress, which has a lower hourly wage due to tips. The entire shift they had me wash dishes in the sink, but paid me waitress wages. A few months later the restaurant was investigated for a number of fraud activity. That's illegal. They can't pay you wait staff tipped wages if you're not getting tipped. I answered an ad for a babysitting job. I was already working on a casual basis, but it was sporadic, so I thought some after-hours babysitting would be welcome extra cash. The couple were both in the military and proceeded to tell me that I would be staying in the spare room and looking after their 6-month-old child around the clock as well as doing the housework. I would have 1 day off every 2 weeks. They said it is cash in hand so I could sign on to the dole, unemployment benefit, to make up the rest of the money. I left on the spot. They wanted a live-in housemaid and nanny, not a babysitter, and they were not able to pay for one. Why they thought it was up to me to illegally collect the dole to subsidize them, I don't know.
Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.